Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rafae Iqbal, and in today's episode we'll be discussing on a very important topic, that is a Prime Minister's review of the economic roadmap for revival. And of course, as we know, as soon as Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was sworn in, he signalled towards talks with the IMF, immediate talks with the IMF, and resultantly, as the Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb was sworn in, he also talked about negotiations with the IMF regarding the second review of the standby arrangement. In that regard, we have also talked about it in our shows previously over the past weeks, that out of the box solutions, and we have deliberated a lot on the economic prospects of the country, as it is a topic that should be deliberated on more and more. So because we have reached the consensus in our previous shows that out of the box solutions and innovations are vital for economic revival at this moment, and there needs to be solutions that are creative and very productive. And of course, in that regard, a roadmap has been laid down and revealed. The Prime Minister has also reviewed this. This will be the roadmap for economic revival of the country. It is a 5-year plan, and it focuses on bringing down inflation, jobs creation, macroeconomic stability, and along with that, it also focuses on revamping the different sectors such as energy, education. Of course, along with that, IT, as it is also, we talked about it in our previous shows as well. It can be a major source of quick revenue generation. Along with that, as Pakistan is an agriculture-based economy, there's also talk about revamping and modernizing the agriculture sector. There's also talk about the reforms in the Federal Board of Revenue structure, calling for digitalization of the tax structure and also increasing the tax net, and of course, along with that, increasing the revenue to tax generation and tax collection of the country. Along with that, there's also talk about food security and of course renewable energy generation. These are the elements that were focused upon in the economic roadmap. And of course, the Prime Minister has said that there will be consultation with all the stakeholders regarding that, and a committee will be formed, which and there will be consultative meetings regarding the roadmap. And of course, as the stakeholders they come to a consensus, policies will then be framed, and of course, this will consider and consult all the different sectors of the economy. Moving on to the second topic, we'll be discussing how Pakistan accuses India of violating the accord with the Agni 5 test. And of course, an agreement was reached between Pakistan and India on 3rd of October 2005. Article 2 of this agreement says that there should be an advance notification and a 3-day timeline to the other party before any weapons testing, and we'll also be deliberating on that and discussing the different aspects of it. Talking about that in the studios, we've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi. Along with Farrukh Pitafi, we have been joined by geopolitical analyst Raja Faisal. And on Skype, we have been joined by Dr. Mahmood, Khalid, who is an economist, and Ashraf Malkham, who is a senior journalist. Thank you both for your time. I'd like to start off our conversation from the first segment, that is the Prime Minister reviewed the roadmap for economic revival. Of course, Dr. Mahmood, Khalid, I'd like to begin the conversation with you and ask you how there's talk of bringing down inflation to facilitate the masses, to facilitate the population, as they've been going through a hard time. They've been struggling to meet their ends, and of course, they come as there should be some relief provided to them. And the roadmap focuses on providing opportunities and facilitating the people so they can be further empowered. It also focuses on small and medium enterprises. But considering the economic roadmap, how do you think this can bring down inflation in the country, and how can it produce revenue and jobs as well? As there needs to be a very comprehensive framework so that the policies that reflect the will of the people, and they can facilitate those people in revenue generation, and of course, along with that, providing them opportunities so they can further also contribute to the economy of the country.
Well, thank you very much, Rafe, for having me on the show. Well, actually, the Prime Minister has given the roadmap, since you have also mentioned that it's a 5-year program. So we cannot have all the results upfront. But certainly the targets has been set, and that is going to now help us, and by and large the community which is actually involved in terms of planning and how we can achieve these milestones, into further working down that what necessary changes needs to be made. Now, while doing so, we have to be cognizant of the fact that Pakistan is at crossroads in the sense that it's not an easy path to take upon. We are facing challenges both domestically as well as on the external front, economically speaking. We have to make external repayments to the tune of close to $30 billion in one given year. And on the domestic side, our domestic interest payments have risen so much that almost all of our tax revenues are actually taken up by the interest payment. So virtually all the governments are actually run on borrowed money. On top of that, the problem with our production side and in general the economic sector is that it has been plagued with so many complexities and problems that the solutions are not very easy. So I believe that the tone has been set that this is what, and this is something which we can also think as everybody's wish in the economy. It's not just about the Prime Minister, it's the thinking of every citizen of Pakistan that we should actually move towards a situation in which we have better jobs, we have inflation, which unfortunately has not been at that level which we are trying to do so as compared to the rest of the world. When initially it started off, we were at par with the rest of the world. Everybody was facing the same sort of brunt in terms of our inflation, but now we are still left with that, and that's also been noted by the IMF as well. But how to move out of that, that is something which we have to actually delve upon. So the direction has been set. Now it is the job of the planning division and the government side, the State Bank, the Ministry of Finance, and allied departments to come out with that kind of a roadmap and strictly follow that. Because unfortunately, in case of Pakistan, the problem had been that as the governments change, the visions also change, and the decisions which were taken by one government, which kind of gives the direction to the private sector, also gets changed down the road. So that is something which we have to ensure that this time this doesn't happen. And whatever policy decisions has been taken, we are firm on that, and that basically leads us to the path which the Prime Minister has actually shown.
Right. You mentioned that there should be a continuity of policies. Regarding that, there's also talk of the state owned enterprises, SOEs, and we know that they incur a lot of losses on the national exchequer, and there's talk of privatization of that as well. And that was earlier on, and the PDM stint, we saw that that had been initiated. Do you think these continuity of policies are going on? And even if the policies are going on, the question that remains is, how will they be implemented? I mean, there should be some proper framework and there should be deliberations, because there's always talk of a roadmap that is provided, but it's not implemented in its full because of the challenges in society.
You're absolutely right. And this is what we believe from the outside as well when we are looking at the policies in which we see these recommendations which has been made. For example, everybody knows that the state-owned enterprises are taking away much of our fiscal resources. But how to come out of that, that is something which we have to actually think and act upon. Like, for example, there is an option which the government has taken up in the rest of the world is to take all your state-owned enterprises to stock market. Simply list it and let the people decide on its price and how they want to run it in the future. Similarly, for other sectors, for example, the energy sector, the idea is very simple: to decentralize all the production and distribution companies should break up into smaller pieces where they are actually providing the services to the individuals at the individual micro business level perspective. Similarly, other practices can be adopted. But the question is that how it is going to be actually implemented. And for that, as I mentioned earlier, that we have to have a kind of a roadmap along with certainty in policies. Like, for example, FPR. In the last caretaker regime, we had lots of deliberation on the FPR reforms. Many commission recommendations were actually put up. They were actually approved by the cabinets as well. But there was a court stay on the implementation of that. Now, I'm not saying that it's wrong or it was basically the right step by the court and other government departments by not accepting what was proposed. The idea is very simple, that if you are making a change which is not going to last for even a couple of years, so how the businesses and by and large the investor company individuals can believe upon that how the future is going to work. So we have to actually make a policy and stick to it. And for that, we need to have lots of homework, which is actually going to give us a kind of a framework which is tried and tested. And that is something which is the way forward, if I think it from outside.
Yeah, Malcolm Saab, I wanted to come towards you. Obviously, this is a very crucial time when we know that IMF team is in Pakistan, and we know that the obviously government that has been installed very recently, of course, they have a roadmap, and they have given that roadmap, especially related to inflation and poverty alleviation. Looking at these things, and at the same time looking at of course the IMF team in Pakistan, how crucial and how important the timing of it is, the roadmap coming right now, and how would it play for obviously the IMF negotiations as well.
So thank you very much for taking me in the show. So let's start with the IMF. Whenever IMF comes, we start on some working on different projects, different reforms, different promises. But unluckily, this is the sad side of the story. These promises are not fulfilled. No, IMF is not ready to trust us. In other countries, they come with the project, then they set some conditions and ask some and give some targets with the direction to implement it. Over here, situation is reverse. They're asking everything upfront. They're asking for everything to do first before the release of next tranche. So as far as the timing of the program is concerned, it's okay. Mr. Shabazz, Prime Minister of Pakistan, who is known for speed, he's okay. It looks good. He is quick taking decisions. Today he took a very important decision. This issue was digitalization of the FBR. These were different controversies. FBR wanted to do it through PRAL and somebody from other. The result was that nothing was coming out of that. Today he forced the IBR on the on the dictation of the IMF to sign an agreement with the Tras
Karandas.
company, and it was Karandas company in the evening. It was done. This is a very good sign. This is a very positive sign. Think we have to move like this. But the other things, which the sitting government has the time to do it right now. This is not high time. This is the last time. This is the last chance for us to go for the right direction. Number one, we have to think about the capacity payment issue, as was done by the previous government. We have to think for the capacity payment issue. This is a major issue which is making our electricity prices very high. So unless we resolve the issue of capacity payment with the IPPs, mostly our friend Chinese companies, we cannot get rid of the issue relating to the high price of electricity. We have to sit, we have to talk to our friends to do something as was done by the previous government. I will, sorry to say, I have to say, by the PTI government, but that not was only PTI. In that meeting, where they had negotiations with the IPPs installed in 1994, civil side was there, a rep of army was there, a civil from the corporate sector people were there, from the technocrat Chaudhry Muhammad Ali, caretaker in the farming government, he headed that commission, came with a very good agreement. They have to follow this agreement with the Chinese company so that we can save at least 2,200,000 rupees. This is not small amount. This is a 2.2 trillion rupees a year. Number two, we have to think for reprofiling. Our debt is too huge. We are spending almost 3,600 billion rupees every year on the payment of interest and the small amount in principal and mostly on interest. We have to ask our friendly countries to go for the reprofiling. This is very important. We cannot, our economy cannot survive, cannot move along unless we sort out these two major issues. These are eating up our resources every year. Then comes our own decision what we have to do, we can do, we should do actually, I should say. Number one, we have a very good infrastructure. This is very costly. We have to pay the price of this infrastructure. But sorry state of is this. We have we have a long motorway from Pindi to Lahore in late 90s. Yeah, as I remember, it was in 99, but not a single industrial zone is situated on this motorway. We have to think about industrial zones on all our motorways. We have the top class infrastructure. As far as the roads are concerned, we have to utilize it. We have to go for industrial zones, special industrial zones, so that we can earn something from it, which can make revenue for us, which can make foreign currency for it. So then every party know this is the everything. I am a positive man. We should take everything positive. No major parties are sitting in the government. I'm talking about the Pakistan People's Party and the Muslim League, and they should leave politics aside. They went for IPPs, they went for short term issues, they went for metro, something like this, orange train, blah, 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 blah. No, they should leave these things. They don't do work for the next election. They do it for the generation, for the government of Pakistan. The government has to go for long-term projects which can save our revenue, which can bring cheaper electricity. I'm talking about the hydel electricity, the construction of dams on the different rivers which we have. They have to work, they have to jump up right now, tighten the belt for the long-term projects which may take 7 to 10 years for completion. Forget next elections. Think about the Pakistan. Think about the Pakistani. Think about the Pakistan economy. Go for non-political decisions. Go for long-term beneficial decisions which are in the benefit of the government of the people of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan. Number third, everybody knows no Ashrafi or intelligence is paying tax. Our traders are not paying tax. Our retailers are not paying tax. Our wholesalers are not paying tax. Our industrialists are not paying tax. Our importer and exporters are not paying tax. You have to sit with them, make them to pay tax. Use the iron hand to get tax from them. First sit with them, tell them you are earning money, you are making money, lessen your interest, uh, lessen your interest, pay taxes. Nobody is paying tax in the Pakistan other than the salaried class. These are the major things which we do immediately. Last thing, we have to get rid of the development projects, political recommendations. In the PDM government, we spend huge money on a development project on the basis of political recommendations. We have to leave it. We have to get rid of this practice. This is not good. This is
And
not service. Very
Malcolm
much
Saab,
funds are
that
eaten up by
actually
the
makes a lot of sense because essentially political parties, MNAs have been getting a developmental fund. But allow me to actually go back to Dr. Mahmood. Dr. Saab, earlier when you were talking about SOEs, one thing actually stuck out. You were talking about the proposal or the idea to take SOEs to, to list them and to take them to the stock market. My humble submission is it not because of such ideas that we have been actually trying to reinvent the wheel in first place? For example, when you talk about PTI's government, they talked the great talk about Khazana model and all that. Instead of that, and because there is going to be a considerable turnaround time, is it not opportune to offload these assets to whosoever comes and whosoever is willing to actually repair them and to make them profitable? And do we have we actually calculated what kind of time will be needed for each loss-making SOE to turn around?
Actually, you are very right. There is a report called the Triage Report, which actually classifies the state-owned enterprises in terms of what kind of possible layoffs can be made. And in that, there are options in which we can simply sell at whatever price the best possible bidder comes in. But the problem with that is that what and who is going to actually put the price towards that entity, including all the balance sheet items. So what happens is that when you list something at the stock market, we assume that because the markets are working in terms of getting all the possible information for the likelihood in terms of doing the business in the future. So it's not just a simple decision in terms of looking at the balance sheet, rather they look at the profitability of the business. So essentially, generally speaking, the stock market actually helps us put the right price towards that asset which is going to be traded. So I'm not saying that that's the only option. If we can get a bidder which can gives us the maximum value, but unfortunately, looking at the past, how entities were sold, what kind of price mechanism was secured, and how they are actually performing, what kind of problems are there, that actually leads us to a belief that we should not think about individual bidding options, we should also consider for some
Could you
businesses that we
actually,
can list them.
I'm grateful that you are actually bringing up the old examples as well. Could you actually bring in
Yeah.
two examples which are cited as good examples, PTCL and MCB? Do you think that that privatization was a format to emulate, and in coming days perhaps we can go in the same manner forward?
Dr. Mahmood, if I'll have to stop you for a moment, I will have to take a short break, and after that, we'll continue with Farrukh Pitafi's question and start from you. Welcome back. Starting back with our conversation, Dr. Mahmood Khalid, Farrukh Pitafi posed a question towards you. Please, if you'd continue.
Okay, so coming back to Pitafi's question on the good examples for privatization. Uh, as I've earlier said, it's not about selling to individual uh, companies, to owners coming from outside Pakistan or domestically. In this case, the MCB going to Mansha Group, or the PTCL going to company Etisalat coming from outside. The issue is only that how have actually we valued their assets. Now, for the state-owned enterprises, over time, what has been a common fact is that their balance sheets does not only have assets pertaining to their activity, core activity, but they have also assets which are in the form of real estates. They have got businesses, or they have got places which are not directly linked with their main concern, but they're sitting in their balance sheets. And that is something which actually leads to underpricing of that particular entity from a business perspective. So what we basically believe is that simply listing in the stock market is not the only option. There can be better options as well. Like for example, when we talk about the steel mills case, it was considered that instead of like throwing it in a sense of a complete business to some entity, why can't we have partnerships in terms of having the domestic sellers of the same business kind of creating a consortium, and they can actually bring in their expertise, they can manage the business, they can actually lead to a perpetual or gradual shift from the public sector to the government sector. So there is no quick solution towards each and every state-owned enterprises. Each
Yeah, but
state-owned
now,
enterprise will
but
have
Dr.
its.
Saab, now you are talking about privatization design. And I agree
Yeah.
with you that there is going to be restructuring of many assets, and those things which are not actually directly linked to their production or their business, they can be actually parcel out. But that is something else, right?
No, no, I'm not saying that it's not just about the design or the way, but simply stating that the state-owned enterprises can be privatized is not going to solve this crisis. We have to think through, and this is what the triage report has actually recommended as well, that we should move forward in terms of developing the action plan, the roadmap, and they have actually identified a number of saleable entities which can directly go to the individual owners through bidding process, and some of the state-owned enterprises needs to work upon in terms of making them good for sale, and some are going to be simply liquidated. Like, for example, you mentioned the MCB business kept on because the financial sector or the banking sector, after the deregulation of that sector, like the telecom, actually had bonanza in terms of giving resources to the government as well as doing the private credit to the businesses. So that actually went forward. But we have to think about all the state-owned enterprises. Can they really work for future? Now, one thing which we have to be really cautious is about that when we are talking about shifting these state-owned enterprises to private sector, we should not actually create an ownership which is driven based on the local resources. Unfortunately, in case of Pakistan, if you look around, we have got very good big businesses, but unfortunately, they are not exporting because we have involved them in terms of domestic production only. You look at the bigger groups like the Mansha group, which we have just, and other players in the market, they have simply switched from export sector to domestic production because the incentives are there. When we are even relieving the storied enterprises to the market, we have to ensure that somebody who's going to take up that resource should not simply switch his resources from his ongoing concern to this part. And that is actually not helpful to the economy in a sense of taking us to that position where we can earn some exportable surplus as well, or simply getting out of the fiscal side. So it's a very delicate kind of a business, but you have rightly mentioned that we have to move forward. We can't sit back.
Very true, very true. Malham Saab, that actually makes me come towards you because you are someone who's actually a senior colleague to us when it comes to all of these, economic matters as well, and how the governments actually bring in the policies and how they implement the policies. Of course, in this roadmap, there is something that was of huge interest, and that was related to innovation and modernization. Of course, it takes us towards the inclusion of IT sector, and of course IT sector would be playing an excellent role in it. We all know that our overseas Pakistanis, they have excelled in the IT sector, living in Canada, living in America, UK, and rest of the European countries. They are doing excellent jobs out there. We know that FDIs, when overseas remittances come to Pakistan, majority of the times they come towards the real estate sectors, and this is where all of the money is getting invested from the overseas Pakistanis. Isn't it the time that we should be making this innovation and modernization sector so lucrative for the foreign overseas Pakistanis that they are interested in investing in these fields, so that we are in a way getting FDIs that is actually coming to Pakistan. We always talk about there will be policies, and these are the policies that are going to be implemented, but where do the money come from? We never talk about that.
So if you look at let's discuss one by one. If you look at the real estate sector, again I will say, so sorry for this, we are in the clutches of very strong mafia, and the clutches of this mafia are very strong. They are crushing our society, our economy, and everything. Who is running real estate business? Look at one by one. They are more powerful than state. There are few individuals, one or two institutions sitting on the state-owned television. I cannot go beyond the limits. I have certain limits. You have certain limits. But look at the real estate players. They are more powerful than the state. Two, three groups. Truth, they prove time to time. I will give you just one example without naming anybody. One group bought land free of cost in Karachi. Issue was cropped up, went to the court fined the pen. He was fined something 580 billion rupees. He didn't pay a single installment. Years passed. This is more than 5-6 years. He didn't pay a single rupee to that account. The only amount in this account went, this was famous case, 190 million. It was luckily was gifted to us by the UK government. That was a gift. They caught it and sent it to the government of Pakistan. We gave it back to that tycoon. We gave it back to that tycoon. This is the only installment which in the Supreme Court account was deposited. Is he more powerful than the state or not? Yes, he is. There are 2-3 more individuals. They change the policies. They make the cabinets. I know. They make the cabinets. They nominate their reps in the cabinet. Sometimes they nominate their employees in the cabinet. So they are so powerful. We have to crack down on that mafias. We have to make the real estate sector document it, make them to pay taxes. In Pakistan, properties prices are very high. They're very inflated. They're artificial. They're not genuine. So the result is that housing is very, very difficult thing in Pakistan. Just they are playing in the files. They are ruining the agriculture sector. They are ruining the agricultural lands and making the societies for miles and miles without giving any input to the government of Pakistan, the state of Pakistan. The second thing which I will agree with the Dr. Saab, everything you start, it should not change with the change of government. We need continuity. Whatever your decision you're taking, take it after thorough discussions, then make the law, make the constitutional binding. No new government or no government can change it. We need continuation of policies. As for coming with a privatization, sorry, Dr. Sir, I will disagree with you. We don't have the time to think for that. We don't have the time to go for mechanism. If you remember, we sold out steel mills. That was a, I can't say that was a good deal or a bad deal, but that was the deal. The Supreme Court of Pakistan finished it. What is the price? What is the price? More than 1,000 billion rupees. We are trying to sell the PIA. My friend Shaukat Aziz was the Prime Minister of Pakistan. He said we should get rid of them. We should sell the PIA just in $1. Take it. Then Musharraf Sahab was in power. He laughed. He made mockery of him. We will run it. Now today, so you see, according to official documents, PI eaten up more than 13 billion rupees. That's this is not time to make the mechanism. This is a time to get rid of these entities.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but the idea is that let's be fair.
I don't believe in stock market. Who will buy the shares of or the or any other entity who are dying?
So we should close the stock market then.
No, why close whatever is giving you profit?
That's an institution which we should trust.
So we have to get rid of these entities. We have to improve governance. That's lastly, I will say, we have to think about the distribution of resources within the federal government and the provincial governments. Provincial governments are taking a lot of, but they're not taking responsibility. Why were funding the people through BISP? Why not provincial government? Why were paying for the agriculture sector, were importing on some edible items, sugar and something wheat, something oil? Why provincial governments are paying bill of their food? Why food departments in Pakistan? NDMAs, when a crisis comes, we are sorry for this, we are not in the right part of the world. We are facing the national calamities. Why federal government is putting something over there? Law and order is provincial issues. Why federal government is paying for this? We have to think about it. Agriculture issue, agriculture tax, the purely provincial subject. Why we are not imposing agriculture on the big land owners? I will not say we should put tax, agriculture tax on every farmer who are owning 50 acres or 40 acres or even 10 acres. We should fix a criteria. Directly, small landowner is not a culprit. Culprit is who is a big landowner. He has developed his industry with this agriculture. He is showing his income from agriculture, which is not from agriculture, from the industrial sector, and pretending that's my agriculture income, it should not be taxed. He is avoiding tax. Everybody knows it. We have to bring this sector, agriculture sector, in the tax net. This is very important. We have to digitalize, which we start with half-heartedly. We should have an agreement months back. Today we signed an MOU for the digitalization of the FBR. Why we doing this under pressure of IMF? Why IMF is telling us why we should not do it by ourselves?
But I have a reservation with the digitization. If you go ahead only converting the manual into an automated system is not going to solve your problem. It's the laws at the back which needs to be improved first, and then comes the later part in terms of interaction with the actual taxpayers. So we have to be
not essentially against the idea of automation or digitalization. You are basically saying that the laws should also be adapted, right? Accordingly.
Exactly.
Thank you. But we are all in agreement, right?
Right, and it's quite an interesting turn the conversation has taken towards. Farrukh Pitafi, I'd like your comments, and I'd also like you to comment on, because both of our guests, our very respected guests, mentioned there should be a continuity of policies. The framework that's currently been given, it's for 5 years. Do you think in these times the framework that should be provided should be for a longer period? Considering
my goodness, how long? 50 years.
Because we're also hearing talk of a charter of economy. There could be some framework that's laid down that could be prolonged or could be given national interest, no matter who or whatever party comes into power in the future.
Right, Rafae, actually there's a reason why we are talking about 5-year vision or plan. Usually that is the remit of any elected government, right? They don't exceed the remit of 5 years. So that is within the term they can actually turn around certain things, that will be great. Of course, we can talk about longer plans as well, but there is a history also. For a little while, Pakistan kept on following the socialist model. There we used to have 5-year plans. And our 5-year plan, one of the 5-year plan during Ayub Khan's time was actually taken up by South Korea, and that was celebrated also. And somehow we are where we are. They have moved on, and they have become a great economic engine of growth. Now, I wanted to actually very quickly come back to what Malkham Sahab was talking about, particularly that of one business tycoon, and I don't know why he is reluctant. I can name him as well. Malik Riaz in his Beria town, right? Amazingly, if you look at South Asia, there's something similar happening in neighboring India as well, which is thought to be a healthier economy than ours. Recently, they have actually opened up, because thanks to the Supreme Court, they have actually opened up the case of electoral bonds, right? So, first of all, State Bank of India, which is a bank, which is not a regulator, but which actually refused to open up the list. And finally, when they have actually disclosed them, the 3 big ones, amazingly, the 3 big ones, Reliance, Adani, and Tata, are not even mentioned. So, so that is not only our case, that every channel, when they are talking about Malik Riaz, they suddenly say a business tycoon, or for that matter, a property developer. But that happens elsewhere as well. My concern is that we can fight these demons because there is conviction that we want to move forward. Now, my concern, and I'm going to talk about those things which are very close to my heart. One, bringing down inflation. Secondly, ensuring that poverty alleviation does take place, right? BISP has been mentioned, which is a great instrument. I hope that we can actually keep on growing that. Inflation has to be brought down, but that will have to be done to manage the supply demand cycle as well, and that is something interesting. But regarding another thing, that is job creation. I tell you, Rafae, I have this WhatsApp channel on which I'm connected with thousands of young Pakistani who are educated but jobless, right? Every time I open a window, a little window, they actually prove their mettle so effectively. So we have these freelancers and capable people who can really touch the sky. The biggest problem is there is dearth of capital for them, right? So what we need is VCs, venture capitalism in the country. How do you do it? Of course, Western ones are not going to come very quickly. China has a VC model as well. Invite them and just create a kind of situation where they can see that there are good ideas which can be taken aboard. And secondly, intellectual property is lost in Pakistan. If you want to patent, if you want to go for any kind of copyright, you are lost. You don't know which lawyer to go to, which office to go to. Please streamline that as well, so that if a young one actually creates some new software or some appliance or some idea, that can be copyrighted and nobody actually steals it from them, right? Job creation, sir, at this moment is most important. Divestment will help. Bringing down interest rate will also help, but then you have to have VC. The VCs will also help. Sir,
Malkham Sahab, if you would like to...
Malkham Sahab, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, if a short comment, because we're running short on time.
Go ahead.
Mostly I agree with you. We need to create our own produce. We need to strengthen our large-scale manufacturing, which will not only save our money we are spending on the imports, but it will also earn some money from the exports. At the same time, it will provide jobs. Public sector cannot provide jobs to youths which have more than 60%. This is not the sole responsibility of the state to provide jobs to the unemployed people. Private sector have to come along with the government. We can go for the partnership. We have to strengthen, we have to grow our large-scale manufacturing, number one. Number two, we have to look after for the agriculture sector. Only if we can work on the agriculture sector, we can increase our growth. At the same time, it can save our imports. It can decrease our import. We look at our imports. We're agriculture, agro-based economy. We're importing edible oils, roughly, if I'm not wrong, this is about $6 billion a year. We're importing sometimes wheat, sometimes sugar. We have to be self-sufficient in food. Everybody is talking the food security. We have to secure our food and save the import bill and decrease the import bill. Though the second thing is our youth is moving the streets like mad. There's the mad crowd. We have to take care of that crowd. We have to set direction for them. We have to make them useful citizen of Pakistan who can take part in the progress, the development of their country. No government has done anything for the youth. We were talking about the IT sector. Whatever government has done.
Of course,
Right.
Ashraf Malkham Saab, as we know that, yeah, the country has a youth bulge, and of course that youth bulge needs to be addressed in the first segment. Unfortunately, we're running short on time. As
Will you allow me to finish the thought that I was just, earlier saying?
Very briefly,
You know,
yeah.
One sentence.
Yeah.
Training and skill development is not a big deal. You can always do it, but you have to actually bring in capital so that people start doing it as well. Our youth is very capable. Just keep on training them.
Incentives for the youth. Of course, we need to strengthen production in the country, and of course, we need to focus on job creation as well and human resource development so that this youth can become productive and, of course, play their part in revenue generation and strengthening economy of the country. Of course, I'd like to thank both our guests, Dr. Mahmood, Khalid, Economist, and Ashraf Malkham, senior journalist. Thank you both for your time and your views. I'd like to move on to our second segment now, as we're running short on time, and Raja Faisal has also been waiting very patiently to comment on that. We'll discuss Pakistan has accused India of violating accord with the Agni 5 test. This was an agreement between Pakistan and India that was reached in October. And of course, as we know, if we talk about India's the dynamics in India, earlier we saw the Ram Mandir inauguration, then we saw that the Citizenship Amendment Act. Raja Faisal, do you think the Agni 5 tests are just an election gimmick, or is it something that they actually tested and went ahead with, or are they just playing with their
Rafae, when
anti-Pakistan
obviously when I obviously talk about the Agni 5, of course there is an accord between Pakistan and India because we know that there is a live conflict going on, obviously owing to the fact that Kashmir is of course a bone of contention between both of the countries. So to control the arms race, of course we have an accord, but India has been obviously evading it. And if we talk about their own needs, of course their own needs, now they are facing two front, of course Pakistan on one side and the other side is China. So that is why their needs are bigger than ours. And what they have done is, of course, Agni 5 is a sort of ballistic missiles that has the capability of taking the nukes as well. They are covering the whole map of China, and that is why they have done so, because they are challenging China in the South China Sea. But at the same time, this is a violation of an accord which obviously is with Pakistan. To control the arms race, of course, India has to comply with it. But at this hour, of course, we know that every step which is being taken by BJP's government, that has a lot to do with, of course, their race that is taking place in their own country, and that is related to their own elections, general elections. And that is why we are seeing that they are using every bit to have the votes. The BJP would go to any extent, but of course they need to be within their own limits, never cross the limits.
Very rightly put and very articulate, Raja Faisal. We also hope that the election campaign and the electioneering stays inside limits. Of course, we know that India has always went on with their anti-Pakistan narrative. As soon as the general elections come close there, with that we'll wrap up the second segment, as Raja Faisal was very articulate and put it in a very beautiful manner. We'd like to conclude today's episode. In the second segment, we talked about how Pakistan has accused India of violating the agreement. Of course, we'll meet you on Monday, same time. Till then, take care and have a great weekend.